So this is our mixed litter of Champagne d'Argents and Mini Rex. Belle was peeing on the litter, pulling babies out, and just generally not feeding them. So we went ahead and right now we are letting Solstice take care of them. So almost all the black babies you see in here are Champagnes and the brokens are Mini Rex. But Solstice is a super good mom, so she has been doing a great job feeding everyone. These little babies right here are just under 2 weeks old, so we should start seeing them open their eyes and leave the nest box. I actually found one this morning outside the nest box with his mom, and he was not happy. He looked pretty cold. So we threw him back in here so he could warm up. If the babies keep getting out of the nest box consistently, what I'll start doing is I'll flip the nest box over on its side. But overall, this litter has been doing really great. They've been consistently gaining weight, and we haven't lost anyone since the first day or so. But with Solstice, that's not really surprising because of how good of a mom she is.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our favorite game show. Is Freak dead? Or is he just sleeping? And ladies and gentlemen, Freak is just sleeping today, trying to give his mother a heart attack. Thank you, Freak, for participating in today's game.
So, yeah, I've talked about this before, but any time to complain about my rabbits is a good time for me. So let me complain once again about Chow Chow. If y'all didn't know, at one point in time we had George and we had Freak. George is now living in Arizona. Freaky Boy is still here. And I had bred my one Californian to George before he left. And that Californian was supposed to have a huge litter. Well, she only ended up having 2. She had a stillborn that I didn't even know about till a couple days later because she hid it too well. And then we had Chow Chow. And I, for the first time in forever, was begging for a boy. Statistically speaking, I'm like, this has to be a boy this time. Because in theory, George and Tati together should have created a better pairing and could have given us a secondary bloodline to beat Freak out. So I could have kept Freak and that other one. Well, Chow Chow, as we know for the longest time, is a girl. Chow Chow's a girl. Chow Chow should have been a boy. And she's just gorgeous. She's beautiful. I love her, don't get me wrong. She has amazing types she's going to show in the next couple of months. But what is this? This is supposed to be my boy, and it's a girl. And then Freak Jr., I liked Freak Jr., but if I'm going to keep the same bloodline as Freak, he needs to be better than Freak. And he is about meh. He was about the same quality that Freak was, but he just had too long of a shoulder by about that much. And I just preferred Freak over Freak Jr. So Freaky Boy is still here. Freaky Boy is still the only sire in our club. And then I have this thing, which I don't. You were supposed to be a boy, and you are a girl. But you're a pretty girl, so I guess that's okay. So yeah, no actual contenders for Freak yet. Just a bunch of animals that want to play games. Lots and lots of games. And all this broth right here, I'm going to save for soup later. So be looking for that recipe soon.
Hey y'all, it's time for me to use that rabbit broth that I made yesterday. Unfortunately, I did not know that when you made stitches that you couldn't adjust your clips. So these clips are really awkward in length. Normally I would go through, edit, and shorten everything. So instead of telling you how I made this recipe, which slaps, let me tell you, I thought I would tell you a little bit about this recipe and how I got it. I met my best friend in the whole wide world when I was stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And though we were in the same company for about 2-3 years, we didn't get close, unfortunately, till the very last year we were stationed together. We would spend our Friday nights together watching the latest episode of Demon Slayer and Disney movies. And during this, she would cook her amazing food. Lena is Japanese American and she made the most amazing dishes. No matter what she brought to a potluck at work, it was gone within minutes because of how delicious it was. And after constant begging from myself and others, she made a digital cookbook which she spreads amongst her friends. But the thing that gets me about every time I look at her cookbook is at the very bottom, there is a single sentence that says, "You're welcome, bitches," with way too many S's. And it always makes me smile and think of her. So anytime me or the kids are missing Auntie Lena, we will pull up her cookbook and we will choose one of the recipes in there. This is her ramen recipe. And though it is a simple dish, it is a favorite of all of us at the house. It is warm and comforting, and though it's simple, it is a favorite. The only problem about this recipe is I can no longer make normal instant ramen. My children demand Auntie Lena's recipe. But in a lot of ways, I'm okay with that, because Lena's friendship is worth it.
Ask yourself, if you want a macaw, are you willing to deal with a screaming child that will not stop screaming until you hold its water bowl for it? Just a thought.
Since y'all want to humanize...
If y'all don't follow OP, go follow her. I realized this morning that I only followed her on my backup and not my main, so I followed her again on my main this morning. And she brings up some really good points when it comes to bonding rabbits. Bonding rabbits is a very dangerous thing, in that no matter what method you use, it's extremely stressful to the animal. Not to mention the animals at any time can break their bonds and severely hurt each other, which is why it's suggested that rabbits not be housed together, and that if left alone on free time and free roam, that it should always be supervised. To be honest, I don't recommend it at all if possible. The only groups that I personally keep together are litter mates and mom and kits. And even then, I'm very careful about when I separate them. The longest that I've kept a mom and a kit together is about 20 weeks. And even then, that was starting to sketch me out a little bit because I was afraid that mom and daughter would start getting into fights. And note, this was in a colony setup with a 10 by 10. Now, I have tried colony setups, and you can read up on colony setups, but there is still a lot of risk and risk mitigation when it comes to rabbits in that kind of setup. And there's going to be someone in the comments arguing the fact that rabbits live in warrens in the wild. And you are correct, rabbits do live in warrens in the wild. But just because they live in social groups doesn't mean that they aren't severely aggressive towards each other. And when it comes to proper husbandry in a setting like this, we go over risk management. Do we really want our rabbits ripping each other's guts out? And I know that's graphic, but that's the kind of thing that happens if you keep rabbits in a setting together with, one, not enough space, or two, just in a bad situation where they can get to each other. These two does live next to each other, and they're just fine with it with a cage separating them. Sometimes I'll see them laying against each other. But that doesn't mean that if those cage bars were removed, that they wouldn't go after each other. At the end of the day, it's safer for my livestock to be separated. And if you have pets that you keep together that are rabbits, I highly suggest mitigating the danger to them. Just because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want healthy, happy rabbits. And in my opinion, the risk mitigation when it comes to housing them or letting them play together is way too high. And if you don't believe me, I have quite a few friends on here that are exotics experts, meaning either they are vets, they are rabbit rescues, or they are vet techs that specifically work with rabbits. And they have some horror stories. Some very graphic, horrible horror stories when it comes to housing rabbits together and broken bonds. So take from that what you will. Alright y'all, it is weaning day for 3 moms. We have a Rex, a Californian, and a Silver Fox that all have litters that are 8 weeks old. So when my babies hit 8 weeks old, the first thing I am going to do is I am going to remove all of the males from the pen. And then they will go into their own grow-out pen. After I remove the males, I am going to give the doe a couple of days to adjust to fewer babies nursing off of her, and I will start taking the babies away from her in pairs. So for instance, if I have 2 females left, I am going to wait a few days till mom adjusts to the loss of milk, and then I'm going to again take more babies away from her. The only time I might wait a little longer to take away larger amounts of babies is if I take away, let's say, most of the litter in the form of males and she only has 1 doe left on her. Then I will leave that doe on her for a little bit of extra time, anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, just to make sure she adjusts and doesn't get mastitis. But that's just how I prefer to do weaning here. I would love to hear how y'all do it. Just in case y'all were wondering how Mr. Gus is doing, he is doing fine, but he does think he is a quail. About a day or so after he hatched, we had a bunch of quail hatch, and we decided to try our hand at raising them together. And despite his size, he does really well with them. We haven't had any problems, surprisingly, and he has been fitting in really well with everyone. If you have a doe that you are currently weaning off of kits, you should be checking her daily for mastitis. And what you're looking for is hot, firm, swollen, painful mammary glands. The doe may also have a high temperature, she might appear lethargic, and also not eat. So basically all you're going to do is you're going to take your hand and feel underneath the rabbit around the mammary glands, so basically around where the nipples and the milk production would be, to see if you feel any hard lumps or if the rabbit is acting any way out of normal, where it be lethargic or not eating. In case y'all don't know, I will be live in about 30 minutes on my YouTube. I'm normally on for about an hour. On to the question though. We don't really bond our pairings before they meet each other for the first time, if you're getting what I'm getting. What you want is either a neutral territory where they can meet. This neutral territory can be a cage that neither of them has been in before, or a breeder stand. If you are going to use a cage that one of them is in, you're going to take the doe to the buck. Does are extremely territorial over their cage and are more likely to be aggressive with the buck if you take the buck to their cage. I had one doe where it was the exception. She would only breed in her cage, and that was a whole thing. But as a rule, always take the doe to the buck's cage, and you're just going to supervise. I'll normally have them do their thing. The buck gets about 3 to 4 good fall-offs, and then in another 12 hours, the doe will make another visit to the buck. And you just want to watch to make sure neither are getting aggressive with each other, because the does will bite off the buck's testicles. No, I'm not kidding. But don't be nervous, just be ready. And if you have a nice pair of thick gloves that you can get in between them, like a nice pair of leather gloves, that's always helpful too. Just to save your hands in case they are getting aggressive, you can get in between them real quick and scoop up whoever is being aggressive. But you got this.